The Forgotten Draven comp has changed quite a bit since set 5.5, and recently it also got some large buffs. In this video, I will be going over the build, what items you make, how to play the early, mid, and late game, then I will go into some in-depth positioning examples. The build is a little flexible, and there are a few different variations you can run, but these are our 4 core units. Draven is our main carry, Hecarim is a strong frontliner, especially in the early, mid, and early late game. Thresh gives us backline access and threatens to pull enemy carries. Viego also gives backline access and forces the enemy to position around him. A common level 8 board will look like this. Here we put in Rel and Nautilus for 2 Ironclad, Knights, and Cavalier. Irelia is there for 2 Legionnaire to give Draven some healing. Jax is there for 3 Ironclad and also to give 3 Skirmishers. Another variation is to go for 6 Forgottens. You will do this when you have max stacks on your Forgotten units and also if you need more damage into your team. Usually, you will take out Irelia and Jax as their synergies and abilities don't provide any meaningful utility to the team, but if you really need healing on Draven, you can replace Nautilus with Irelia here. Another variation is to go for 4 Knights. This is great to counter comps like Lucian, Vel'Koz, and Aphelios. You also get a really strong frontline here, so if you have really good damage on your Draven, you can consider running this instead. You can also run the Mystic version, but you only do this if there's only magic damage left in your lobby, as you are lacking a ton of frontline with this build. If this was a bit confusing to you or you are a newer player, I recommend you just stick to this variation until you get more comfortable with the comp. I will go more in depth on which of these variations you want to run in the different situations in the late game part of the video. Draven is our main carry, so we prioritize making items for him first. He has one core item, and that is Last Whisper. This is because Draven is 100% attack damage based, and with this comp, it is very hard to fit in Akshan for armor shred. So if we face a comp with a ton of armor, we will likely lose without this item. The second item for Draven wants to be IE. This is because we need him to crit 100% of the time in order to shred armor on every single auto attack. And the crit multiplier scales really well with the extra AD we get from the Forgotten trait as well. The third item for Draven wants to be Hurricane, Giant Slayer, RFC, or BT. Take Hurricane or Giant Slayer if you need more damage, or take RFC or BT if you need more defenses for Draven. The reason BT is not a core item on Draven is because we get a lot of healing through the Legionnaire trait, so if you're running a variation with no Legionnaire, it can be a good idea to go BT as the third item. After we have itemized Draven, we need to make tank items and utility items, and a really good item for this comp is Banshee's Claw. This is because we don't have a corner unit that can tank farthest away CC threats like the Thresh Hook, therefore we really want Banshee's Claw in order to protect Draven from those. If you find Viego early, items like QSS, Blue Buff, Frozen Heart, and GA are fantastic on him. Tank items want to go on your strongest frontliner. This will be Hecarim or Rel in most cases. If you get a Spatula, the only good options are Cavalier Spat and Assassin Spat. Cavalier Spat can go on any of your other tanks, and Assassin Spat can be a third item for Draven in some situations, but the vast majority of the time, you should make Cavalier Spat. Here is the rating item tier list for this comp. Hurricane and RFC are S tier because they give Draven a boatload of base attack speed. Rageblade also gives a little base attack speed, but it's more about scaling with that item. The carousel priority for this comp is Glove, Bow, Chain, then Sword. Since this comp revolves mostly around 2 and 4 cost units, we can play any opener we want to, but we want to use the Forgotten units we find in the early game in order to stack them up as soon as we can. The best opener for this comp is Vayne with 2 Rangers and a Cavalier frontline. And some other great openers are Callista with either A-Bomb or Redeem frontline, Sentinel Skirmishers, or Tristana with Cannoneers. Once we've found our comp, we need to make items, and as a general rule, we want to make an item if we have 4 or more components. Some good items to build in the early game that transition well into Draven late game are Last Whisper, IE, Bramble, Declaw, Stoneplate, or Hurricane. Your early game strategy will depend a lot on how good your opener is. In some games you play for a loss streak, and in some games you play for a win streak. If you want to learn more about how to play the early game, check out my guide where I go in depth on the subject. At the Crux round, you should have more direction towards the comp. The general requirements to play Draven is to have 1 component for Last Whisper and 1 component for another Draven item. You also really want to have a Hecarim or Thresh already, as they can sometimes be a bit hard to 2-star at later levels. During the mid game, you always want to hold Draven if you're not playing him, and you want to hold the other units as well if you don't lose eco for holding them. If you're weak in the mid game, typically around 70 to 60 HP, and loss streaking, one option is to roll at level 6 to stabilize, but I personally prefer to keep a loss streak and then roll at 7 on either stage 3-5 or 4-1 depending on how much gold and HP I have. When rolling at level 7, you are generally looking to stabilize off a Draven 1-star and then build a board around him. What you end up with will be different every game, but it wants to look something like this. Note that you can also go with different variations, as you only need the 4 Forgottens as your core units. During the mid game, it's also important to scout. This is so we can see how many other people are playing Draven. This comp can support 2 to 3 players at max, so if you see more than that going for it, consider pivoting to another comp like Jax or Lucian. Also keep in mind that some people might be rerolling for 3-star Vayne or 3-star Misfortune, so if there are other Forgotten players in your lobby, they might not necessarily be contesting you. At the Wolves round, you want to be level 7, and from here you have 2 different options. You can either roll at level 7, or you can go for a fast 8. Going level 8 before you roll is preferred as we have higher odds of forecast there, and we also are able to hit Viego as well. The games where you roll at 7 are when you are 70 to 60 HP or lower, you're loss streaking, or if a lot of other players are rolling down here as well. When rolling down at level 7 on 4-1, it is very similar to rolling down on 3-5. You want to stabilize with a board that looks something like this. The goal from there is to go level 8 on 5-1 and then roll for the rest of your comp there. So try not to roll below 10 to 20 gold as we need the money to go level 8 later in the game. If you find yourself in a spot to fast 8, the goal is to go level 8 on 4-5 and roll there instead. Before you roll at level 8, it is very important that you know which units you're looking for. This is where all the previous scouting we have done comes in handy. With the information on what the rest of the lobby is playing, we can choose the best out of 4 variations to go for, whether it be Ironclads, Knights, Mystics, or 6 Forgotten. The best emblems to grab late game are Forgotten. This lets us take out Jax for MF to get 6 Forgotten in, which is a huge power spike. Ironclad emblem is also really good as we will be close to immune from AD damage. Legionnaire emblem is also good as we can drop Irelia for a better unit. And Knight emblem is also good as we can easily fit in 4 Knights. Once you have hit your board at level 8, you have 3 different options from there. The first one is to roll for Draven 3-star. This is definitely a 1st or 8th kind of play as it is a bit risky. Therefore, I only do this if I have 6 or more Dravens, I am uncontested, and I also have enough golden HP to do a second large roll down later. The second option is to go level 9. This will require you to be relatively healthy, typically 40 HP or more, and it also requires you to have 2-star the vast majority of your non-legendary units. But the more HP and gold you have, the less 2-stars you generally need, as you will be able to make it to level 9 sooner and also with more gold. The goal is to go level 9 on either stage 6-1 or 6-2 in most cases. If you are high rolling and you're able to go level 9 with a lot of gold, the most capped version of this comp looks like this. It is very expensive to pull off, so you will only be able to do this in a couple of your games. The third option is to keep donkey rolling at level 8. You will do this when you're not in a situation where you can go level 9 or go for 3-star Draven. You will do this when you're still missing multiple 2-stars after your level 8 rolldown, and you're sitting on multiple pairs. In addition, if you're not very healthy and you can't sack most of stage 5 to go level 9, you might just be hard stuck level 8. This isn't as bad as it sounds, as we can still get a good placement as long as we're positioning properly. General positioning looks like this. Here we have Draven on the 3rd row as he only has 3 range. This is to make sure he doesn't waste time walking up. Viego wants to be on the same side as the enemy carries. Thresh wants to be on the opposite side as the enemy carries. Irelia is low priority and tanky, therefore she is often cornered to soak damage from enemy carries. Hecarim is on the outskirt of our frontline to make as many enemies as possible wrap around him. Rel is next to Hecarim to get great shielding and stun value. Now let's move on to some in-depth positioning examples. Against the first guy, the big threat is Kayle. We have Irelia in the corner to tank Kayle's damage, Thresh is on the opposite side to hook Kayle, and also to get hooked by the enemy Thresh. Draven wants to be as close to Kayle as possible, to spend as little amount of time as possible walking up. Against the second guy, the big threat is Yasuo. Draven is positioned close to Yasuo, but not so close that he gets stunned by the enemy Rel. Viego is jumping the enemy Yasuo, Thresh is hooking Yasuo and also being Diana bait. Nautilus is positioned to knock up Yasuo, Rel is positioned to stun Yasuo. Against the third guy, the big threat is Vel'Koz. Viego is jumping to CC Vel'Koz before getting thrown by Syndra. Thresh is positioned to tank Syndra toss and also to hook Lux, and then Vel'Koz if he's still alive. Draven is positioned 2nd row to be as close to Vel'Koz as possible, and also to be away from the Vel'Koz beam. Thank you so much for watching. If you learned something, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Comment down below what video you want me to make next. And if you want to get better at TFT, Join the Discord, we got over 3,000 other players there who are hungry to climb. And if you want to get coached by me, the information is over on the Discord server as well. So take care and see you in the next video.